It was announced today that offensive coordinator Brian Hartline will be moving on from Ohio State, but fear not, we have the answers to questions like, will he be coaching out the rest of this season, and who are the top candidates to replace Brian Hartline as Ohio State's offensive coordinator for future seasons. We got to break it all down. What's up, guys? I'm Matt Long. Welcome to Columbus Football 365. If you're an Ohio State football fan, please hit that subscribe button. Only 5.9% of viewers are subscribed to the channel. But let's start answering some of these questions and start off with the news for today. South Florida announced the hiring of Ohio State's offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach as their own head coach on Wednesday. Now, we were expecting, as I spoil absolutely everything, we were expecting that early on in the season, we were expecting early on in this week that Brian Hartline would be moving on to a head coaching opportunity after the season. It was expected to be the Penn State job, but every hour Penn State loses another recruit. They have like 2 guys left. That's a really, really bad job right now. Who knows what they're doing, but hey, I mean, they're in the Big Ten, so they can be bad as long as they want to be bad. But Hartline now moving on to South Florida. The Bulls had a fantastic season this year. However, their head coach, Alex Golesh, moved on to the SEC, taking the job at Auburn. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not their quarterback, Byron Brown, stays at South Florida to play with Brian Hartline, or if he's going to move on and play at Auburn next season. But this is big because not only does it, hurt Ohio State a little bit, because we don't have our offensive coordinator who's been so successful this season. This can hurt the recruiting long term. Brian Hartline was an NFL wide receiver and was the core reason how Ohio State was able to recruit star wide receivers at such a high level and, more importantly, develop them at such a high level. Over the past couple of years, Ohio State has we've been wide receiver U over the last 5 years. I know LSU had, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who are arguably, or not right now. Right now, Jay says the best receiver in football, but usually people argue Jettas and Jamar are the best 2 wide receivers in football, but Ohio State has the depth. But now that this season, JSN has been better, you can argue Ohio State wide receiver U and Brian Hartline has been the number 1 guy going forward. So we got to take a very close look at recruiting, especially when it comes to the wide receiver position. And both of those modern day receivers, they are reconsidering their options. That's all I'm going to put it. Going to make a video on them as well. They are reconsidering their options currently when it comes to Chris Henry and Caden, his teammate, Caden Dixon Wyatt. So we're going to see how that affects us long term. But Ryan Day spoke out and explained that Hartline will remain with Ohio State through the college football playoff. The plan is for him to continue to be with the team, which is a challenge for him, but it speaks to his character that he wants to make sure he finishes this thing out the right way, Day said. He wants to be with us all the way through, all the way to the end, and see this thing out during the season. It will be a busy month for him, but it's been done before and will help him along the way. So Ryan Day being very gracious to Brian Hartline on the way out. There are a lot of schools who a coach went from one school to another, and the first school said, no, you're gone now. You're not coaching us the rest of the way. But some of the schools now, when it's not pretty much when it's not Lane Kiffin, the coaches the schools are letting the coach out the entire rest of the season. So that's good that we are not going to be losing Brian Hartline for the rest of the year. So we're going to continue to get this level of development from Julian Sayin that we've seen over the course of the year. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate will continue to have their fantastic seasons that, healthy or not, they are going absolutely crazy. So hopefully, we are going to be able to send Brian Hartline out as a 2-time back-to-back college football national champion. But let's get into some of the next guys that we can expect to be taking on the job after Brian Hartline moves on. And the first one is pretty obvious. Coming from Essentially Sports, Ohio State can definitely get a familiar face back to Columbus, especially when they have helped in winning a national championship. The Ohio State job could not have came at a better time for Chip Kelly, who was fired by the Raiders. With the Buckeyes, it'll be a win-win situation for both sides. Now, Chip Kelly was our offensive coordinator last season when we won the national championship, and he decided he was going to move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. If you'd rather coach in the NFL than college football, I absolutely understand that. It's a preference for the coach, so not going to slight him for leaving Ohio State. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But Didn't work out for him at the professional level this time around with the Raiders. Got fired last weekend after the Las Vegas Raiders played the Cleveland Browns. They fired Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator. Their offense was an absolute mess, so they had to make changes, and unfortunately, their season is kind of swirling the gutter right now. The Raiders, one of the worst teams in professional football. However, this now frees up the opportunity for Chip Kelly to come back to Ohio State, just pick up exactly where he left off. This time, he will have a new toy with Julian Sayin to game plan up for. He's still going to have the opportunity to coach up Jeremiah Smith, the player that he helped have a fantastic rookie year. I know Jeremiah Smith doesn't really need help, but got to give credit where the credit is due. And Chip Kelly, we've seen him do it in the past, and it would not be a stretch at all for him to come back and continue to do a good job for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I don't think he was the most groundbreaking offensive coordinator in the world. I mean, I really think with a talented quarterback that we had last season and two amazing running backs along with the best wide receiver tandem in the entire country. Will Howard was the quarterback, just blanked on his name, but Will Howard, Trayvon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell, Tate, Emeka Egbuka, that was just ridiculous. That offensive core was, going to make it easy on any offensive coordinator. So I'm not going to give him, I'm not going to go out and be like, oh, he was a groundbreaking offensive coordinator, but he was a good offensive coordinator. And I think he would do another good job should he come back. Now, continuing to go along from Essentially Sports some more. Following the program's trend, Ohio State will be prompted first to assess its existing staff. Tight end coach and co-offensive coordinator Keenan Bailey emerges as a suitable candidate. He's been in Columbus since 2019 as a quality control coach before his promotion to being the tight ends coach in 2023. Now, Keenan Bailey is a coach at Ohio State who's also doing a very good job since being promoted to the full-time tight ends coach. Currently, the Ohio State tight end room is very underrated because their names aren't Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and they're not expected to be top 5 picks in the NFL draft. But Purdue transfer Max Clare is having a fantastic season for the Buckeyes. Also, Will Kazmarek, another extremely talented tight end who is playing very well for Ohio State this season. Max Clare is a guy that I'm seeing projected in as high as the second round of the NFL draft. So if players want to continue to come to Ohio State, they can know, of course they're going to want to come to Ohio State, but they know that the offensive coordinator is still going to be a guy who knows how to develop prospects into professional players. If David Bailey was hired as the offensive coordinator, over the past couple seasons, Ohio State has seen their tight ends be drafted in the mid rounds of the NFL draft. So they can rest assured that Bailey still knows how to develop them at a high level. Maybe it's not going to be as good of development as Brian Hartline brought to the table, because Brian Hartline was absolutely generational when it came to turning guys from high school recruits to college players into NFL prospects. But Bailey is still a guy who knows what he's doing and can absolutely help out this entire offensive coaching staff below him and the entire Ohio State offense as a whole. Now, getting into our final candidate here, this brand new availability can also tempt another former Buckeye. Corey Dennis, who's worked at Ohio State and Tulsa, can also be a great option. Dennis has clearly been on the move a lot, so a chance to come home can tempt him away from the exciting project Dan Mullen is building at UNLV. The Rebels offense ranks 15th in the country, averaging 463.3 yards per game. Now, Dan Mullen and the UNLV Rebels are doing a fantastic, they're running up offensively. The team, they won a lot of games. They didn't make the Mountain West Conference Championship game, but they won a lot of football games this season, and it was because of their offense. So if Ohio State wants to bring in an ex-coach, bring in a guy who got promoted away from us and now give him a promotion going from the UNLV offensive coordinator job back to Columbus to be the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, that would be an extremely, extremely, extremely difficult thing for Corey to turn down. And I do think this would be another good fit for Ohio State because unlike the last guy, the tight ends coach, Corey Dennis has experience as a offensive coordinator at the college football level. And yes, it's currently in the Mountain West, but still college football. People underrate how good the Group of 6 conferences are. Just because they're not Power 4 doesn't mean they're not good football teams. And that was a serious number, 463.3 3 yards per game is absolutely crazy. And these 3 candidates, I mean, Chip Kelly is by far the runaway favorite, but there are going to be more candidates coming to light to find out who the next offensive coordinator of Ohio State is going to be. And we're going to have all the updates when they're coming out. So if you stuck around this long, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video all the way through. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and go Buckeyes.